The Globe Theatre, which opened in 1994, very near to its former site, specialises in original productions of Shakespeare. But it wasn't until 2004 that a play was performed in the original pronunciation, known as OP. The play was Romeo and Juliet.
Well, the Globe is known for its original practices. This is why it is here, to try and recreate the theatre as it was in 1600 and thereabouts. And when they started it off, they decided to do original costume, original music with original instruments, original movement around the stage and so on. But they never did original pronunciation because they thought, quite wrongly, but understandably, they thought nobody would understand it. But it was a very, very successful occasion. The seats were packed for that weekend. Everybody loved it. And it was such a success that the Globe then decided to do a second production the following year, production of Troilus and Cressida.
It transports you back through the centuries. It's a very magical, almost hair-raising experience, especially in this space, to hear that accent, a space that's sort of as close as we can get to a 400-year-old theatre, and then an accent that's as close as we can get to a 400-year-old accent with a 400-year-old play. If anything, it rounds the experience of going to see a Shakespeare play out.
Any period in the history of the English language can be studied from the point of view of how it was pronounced at the time. Old English, Chaucer, and so on. In relation to Shakespeare, we're talking about the sound system or phonology that was in use in a period called Early Modern English, and in the period specifically around about the year 1600. Now, it's a period during which pronunciation was changing very, very rapidly. So there isn't just one kind of OP. There's an OP that evolves throughout the period. For example, early on in the period, people were pronouncing the word musician as musician, musician. Later in the period, it had evolved into musician. And of course, later still, it became musician.
David Crystal and his son Ben regularly work together to demonstrate how original pronunciation differs from modern pronunciation.
It's an interesting accent to tune your ear into. So we're going to run through a few pieces of Shakespeare, first in a modern sort of received pronunciation accent, the accent that you're used to hearing Shakespeare in, and then we'll switch into original pronunciation, and probably Dad will do some and I'll do some as well, so you get to hear it in a different voice.
Their first example comes from Henry V. Ben gives the modern pronunciation and David the OP.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention.
A kingdom for a stage, princes to act and monarchs to behold the swelling scene.
A kingdom for a stage, princes to act and monarchs to behold the swelling scene.
Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars.
Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars.
And at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword and fire crouch for employment.
And at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword and fire crouch for employment.